Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. It's another scorcher of a day today, 32 degrees I think it's meant to get up to. So I thought we could do the July plot tour today and I'll show you what's been going on the plot. I was going to give it a real good tidy up, but I thought no, you can see it, warts and all, because the garden's never perfect. So we'll pop up towards the front gate where we normally start. And yeah, I'll take you around and show you what's been going on. Come on. So I've moved my car because I need to give this a real good trim later today before I go. But the wind has absolutely battered this wild corner. The teasel's fallen over, it's scratching the car when I'm driving in. So I think I am going to have to give that area a really good tidy up, I'm afraid. So we'll get the strimmer to that. I wasn't able to do down here last week. So we'll give this a good tidy up as well. And we'll tidy up where the car goes. Next door is still looking a bit of a state. Quite a few weeds going on over there. But this plot, it's not looking too bad. So we'll start on this side and then we'll pop over to the other side when we get to the end. So if you've watched previous videos, you'll know that I've got a wasp nest currently in my compost. I didn't turn it enough and it was too dry in there, too much dry material. So it's my own fault. It caused the perfect habitat for the wasps to nest in. Now wasps are really good in the garden, so I'm not too fussed about having them. I did try wetting them out with buckets of water just to see if they'd find somewhere else, but they're pretty adamant to stay. So I'm just being really careful when I'm adding new material up on there. They don't seem to be as many. And then just down by the compost bin, we've got the apple tree. We've got quite a few apples on it this year. It's its second year, so we've got a few more apples than last year, but they still don't look great. It did get affected with some sort of caterpillar earlier in the year, but I don't think that actually damages the harvest. It just might be because it's only a couple of years old. And then underneath we've got the pot marigolds. They're now starting to pop. Some of them are already going to seed, so hopefully they'll keep flowering throughout the summer. The lupin at the back has well and truly gone, and I do just need to give it a good weed in there. We've got a few thistles, mare's tail, some horrible weeds in there, bindweed, but we'll get in that. And then just down this side we've got all the rhubarb. So we're not picking that anymore. It's July. Now's a good time to stop. But please make sure that you keep watering that rhubarb because they don't like to get dry. So I do put quite a few buckets of water on here over the summer and then give it a good feed once it all starts to die back. Down next to the rhubarb, we've got the sweet corn plants. Now this bed hasn't done too well. These were transplanted plants from the car boot sale. I know that they don't like their roots disturbed. So that could be a reason, whereas the rest have been direct sown in there. They were direct sown in early June. They've really caught up, but I must weed in there because they really don't like competition. We've got 1, 2, 3 beds in there, so that should give us plenty of sweet corn. Before we move on to the rest of the bed, I just wanted to show you the apple tree. So this was just a stump, but I've let it grow over the last couple of years, and we're now starting to get quite a few apples. It is a cooking apple variety. Now in June, your apple trees should start to drop the apples that they don't need, but if they don't, you do need to go around and remove some of them. So per each bunch, you don't want any more than 3, preferably 2. And that just means it's going to allow your apples to grow a little bit bigger and more airspace, so it doesn't get those diseases. So we'll go around a little bit later and just go around and check and make sure that all the apples have got enough room. And just behind the sweet corn, we've got the last bed, which is the sweet pepper bed. So they do much better out here. We find in the poly house that it's a little bit too humid and the fruits start to rot. And we've got some sunflowers in each of the corners. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And also a couple of tomatoes, which I do need to stake up because they're starting to grow a little bit wild. But they should get plenty of sunlight here. I am a little worried about the sunflowers here blocking out some of the sunlight, but we have had a casualty in the wind. One of the sunflowers have blown over, so we'll need to stake that up a little bit later. I wasn't expecting to have peppers already. We've got 1, 2 peppers already starting to form. Now most of these are red, orange or yellow peppers, so they still need to ripen off, but that is quite early for peppers starting to form on the plants. I'm really happy with that. And then back there we've got a few tomatoes now starting. I have got quite a few weeds in here, so we do need to give this bed a good tidy up. And then down by the sweet corn bed, we've got the dwarf French beans. It's my first year growing dwarf beans, and I was a little bit worried that I wouldn't get much harvest compared to the climbing, but these seem to be absolutely prolific. We've got beans already forming, and we've got plenty of flowers to come, so I'm hopeful for those. And then in each of the corners, I've tied these ones up. We've got a couple of sunflowers. I've got a tomato in that corner and a tomato down here, but I haven't stayed on top of the care, so they are turning into a bit of a bush, so we need to give those a tidy up. At the back there, we've got the onions. Again, I need to give that a really good weed in there, because that is starting to look a little bit messy, and the onions don't like to compete. We've got quite a few nice onions in there actually. I was a bit worried we weren't going to get any. And then right at the back, we've got the parsnip, which has well and truly gone over. Now I don't want parsnips self-seeding all over my plot, so we're going to try and cut some of them down and see if we can save some of the seeds in the shed. So we've got the poor sunflower, which was knocked down in the wind. Now most of the roots are still in the soil, so I should be able to just stake it back up. But the garlic in here, I think it's time that it needs to come out. It has got rust, which is the speckly, sort of orangey brown discoloration that you find on the leaves. Now it shouldn't affect the harvest or the bulb, but once that starts to appear, you really want to start thinking about pulling it up. The pear tree is absolutely adorned with loads of baby pears, if you can pick them all up in there. Now the pear seems to drop quite nicely. We don't seem to have anything more than 2, so we shouldn't have to pick any of these off. But any ideas of what we can do with all these pears? Please let me know, guys. And just under the pear tree, we've got the gooseberry bush. This one's for the pigeons, because they absolutely love a gooseberry. And we're just going to crawl under here. It's a bit of a tight space, but this is all the Michaelmas daisy. I love this time of year when they're all out in flower. Those little white bobbin heads with those yellow centres. We've got a few weeds in here, but I'm not too bothered because this is the pond area. And we did have quite a bit of rain in here the other day, so this should be topped up. But I am conscious that it is underneath a pear tree, so actually I do need to come in here and just top this up a little bit. It's not as full as the other ponds, but this is just a little oasis for the little newts and frogs and toads that find themselves in the garden. They should be protected under all of this. So this was the sunflower first to fall, and it's absolutely stunning. So we've got this little guy and his friend down here, so I really need to get this staked up so that these can bob around in the sky where they should be. So just across from the pond, which is under the pear tree there, we have got the pineberry bed. So these have well and truly gone over now. You harvest them about May, June time, but we do have 2 beautiful sunflowers, one of which has decided to burst, but is facing towards the sun in the morning. A lovely little yellow one. I have got quite a few sunflowers this year. They are one of my favourite summer plants. But you can really now see that parsnip has well and truly gone over now. And if I stand from this way, it is all starting to look quite messy down here. So I do want to focus on that area later today. Just across from the pond, which is under the pear tree there, we have got the pineberry bed. So these have well and truly gone over now. You harvest them about May, June time, but we do have 2 beautiful sunflowers, one of which has decided to burst, but is facing towards the sun in the morning. A lovely little yellow one. I have got quite a few sunflowers this year. They are one of my favourite summer plants. As we move over from the pine berries, we've got the carrot bed, which is coming on really nicely. I'm going to try and harvest some of these today. I did have one go to flower, so I want to try and get some of the big roots out, so it gives some of the smaller carrots a chance to swell up a little bit. And behind the carrots, we've got the gooseberry bush over here, which I've picked absolutely clean. It was covered up. And we've got 4 artichokes down here. Now I'm going to leave them in for a few years anyway, because what they'll do is they'll start to multiply and you'll get more and more plants, and then I can start harvesting some. And then along here we've got this guy which has finally burst. Standard yellow sunflower. He was a self-seeder, so I wasn't too sure what he was going to be. I'm hoping that we'll get some little dinky sunflowers as well. The feverfew is now starting to go over. I need to think about removing that this year, because I do want some crops in here rather than just feverfew. It is used for migraines, I believe, but that's not something that I suffer with, touch wood. But yeah, that definitely needs to come out. And then down here we've got the spring onions. I'll harvest some of these before I go. And we also need some beetroot as well, which have done really well in these beds. It's just a shame that the feverfew took over, because down there I did plant quite a few beetroot as well. And then these dinky little white flowers here, these are the radishes, and what these turn into are little pods, and you can actually eat them. So I'm going to try that this year, because we didn't get the radishes. Here we go, here are the little pods, and you can eat them raw or cooked into a stir fry, so we'll see what they taste like. Broad beans are well and truly done. They are starting to go over, and I think even the beans are a little bit too big now, so I think I'm going to dry these out. They are quite big pods, so I'll keep them on the plant for as long as possible. If we do get loads of rain and they start to mould up, then I'll take them in to the shed and let them dry off in there. But we need to give this bed a real good clear up and think about what we're going to get in there instead. Just down from the broad beans we've got the parsnip bed. So I've given these a really good thin out. I would thin them out to 4 inches to 6 inches between each plant, just so that they've got plenty of room to swell in the ground. And as with many of the beds, I've just got to give them a really good weed over. And then down here we have got the onions. I've let a couple of them flower. Now you should really, as soon as you see them, just pinch them out. As soon as they look like little hats growing from the onions, just snap them off, and it will just stop the inner core from hardening up and turning more into a flower. So I think most of these onions are going to be done soon. They haven't bulbed up very well, and I think it is because of the lack of the light. So I do need to think about next year a better place to put my onions. If you remember last weekend, we gave this area a really good tidy up. It was wild with the parsnip and all the different weeds that were starting to overtake this area. So it's nice to have that all cleared. I'm going to improve the soil in here, because this is going to be my asparagus bed. And then I need to think about what I'm going to put in down here. I might try and get some more artichokes just to build a little bit more of a barrier along there. And I've given this a nice clear up as well. So this is the view from the seating area of this side of the plot. Don't forget, we've still got the poly house and the other half to venture over in. And it is starting to look really colourful down that side, but a lot of the plot is now starting to look quite tired this time of year, except from those little bursts of sunflower, which I absolutely adore. We pan round here. I need to have a good tidy up in this corner. Got lots of rubbish, and I did pull back some of the brambles, but I have noticed we've got quite a few blackberries on the go, so I thought I'd leave those to mature so we get some blackberries. And then down here we've got the red currants, which are still going, so we'll see if we can pick some of these today. I did leave some for the birds, but they don't seem to have really gone in and taken a pick. And also the pink currants are now starting to properly turn, so we should hopefully get quite a few more of those. And then down in this far corner we've got the rose. So this is a brand new shoot which has formed, so I'm going to start trailing it into the panelling there. And we've also got another shoot which has just started to form and come up here. So it's really liking that position now that we've got rid of the girls and there's a bit more light getting down here. I just need to give it a good weed so it's not competing with the bindweed and some of the other climbers that we've got growing in this corner. That's the absolute messy corner. Really need to think about what I'm doing in there. That is where I kept my little girls, my chickens. Up here we've got the grapevine. We used to have tarpaulin over the top here, so the sunlight never really fed through. So that's really put on quite a bit of growth this year. I haven't noticed any flowers or any grapes starting to form like the other one, but no, it's doing quite well. And then I'm not going to show you inside the shed because it's an absolute state. Same within there. We need to give that a good clear out so that I can start using that throughout the winter. Greenhouse, I never tend to use it, but again, that needs a good clear out and a good tidy up around here. And then just down here, we've got the strawberry bed, which needs a really good weed. I just find that this bed gets really dry because of the elder tree that shelters it. It doesn't get much of the sunlight, but when it does seem to bake in there. I have added manure in there in the past, but maybe it just needs some more compost or something added into the soil. So we've now come on to the other side of the plot, which is what I call the original plot. And we've just got some little beds down here. So we've got some lettuce in here, which should probably be picked. It's been in there for quite a few months now. We've got some peas on the go as well. And then just around here, these are the pods that I was talking about a little bit earlier, the radish pods that you can eat. So these are probably now ready to be harvested. So we'll take some of those home tonight, do a bit of research and see what else we can do with those. We continue down the side here with the different pots. In here we've got the 3 different patty pans. I need to find a space for that one, which once I've done a bit of clearing out shouldn't be a problem. Down here is a box of weeds and spring onions, so I need to give that a good weed and give it a good sow in as well, because not many of them germinated the first time round. And then at the back there we have got some beetroot, which don't seem to be swelling up, so maybe they need a little bit of a thinning out and a good watering in. We're meant to get quite a bit of rain later today, so I might water tomorrow if that doesn't happen. These are my potato pots. Now they haven't done very well this year. They're normally lush green plants that are starting to flower, but they seem to have gone over rather quickly, and I believe it's probably to do with the leaf mulch that I used on top. The problem with the leaf mulch is probably that it didn't hold on to the water as well as the soil would, same with the nutrients. So I think I'm just going to top them up with a little bit of compost next year and plenty of fertiliser, and hopefully that will just renew the soil for next year and a better potato crop. If you've watched previous videos, you know that this area is going to be a sort of nature sitting area for myself. It's going to be an autumn project, so that little nook cranny round there and this area will all be cut down and made into something a little bit more presentable. If we just pan round over here, we've got the wildlife area, which we'll go and have a closer look at in a moment. And then we've also got the pond, which is full of life. Today I've actually counted 5 or 6 baby newts. I'll see if I can get some nice footage and I'll put it up on the screen for you. But there's so many in there, and it's only 2 years old, this pond. It's absolutely incredible what bringing a little bit of water into your plot can do. Looking really healthy in here now that it's been topped up full of all that rainwater. And we've got the iris growing. That's all over now. I've chopped all the flower spikes off from there, and then everything else is just ticking over nicely. We've even got some of the forget-me-nots still going. They self-seed all over the place, and I've also let the watercress self-seed. They say to go careful with the watercress, but we'll see how it goes. So the wildlife area is looking pretty dense now. Not full of everything that I planted. I've got a good mixture in here of weeds and my own plantings. I've got one of the daisy flowers now popping up. Some of it is now starting to go over, but the achillea, this didn't flower last year, and it's put so much growth on this year. It's really quite tall. Beautiful pink and a darker pink here. The hoverflies, absolutely love them, and also the butterflies. And then through here we've got the red companion, which is that beautiful bright pink with the velvety white leaf structures. I love the frizziness of the achillea fronds as well. Like I say, quite a lot of weeds as well, so let's see if we can get through some of this. Down here we've got some more of the daisy flowers. I do like the achillea. That's the helenium, I believe. So I didn't think that this was going to be a hardy plant by looking at it, but this has come back from last year. It has blown over quite a bit, but I adore these bright red sunflower type flowers. I think they might turn into a bit of a cone type plant, a bit like the rudbeckia. And then out the back, got more weeds, the foxgloves going over, alliums also now starting to go over. I do need to chop back some of those cherry saplings that are starting to sort of poke through, just to give it a little bit more of a cleaner feel to this area. I know it's a wildlife area, and I do need to try and figure out what to do with that peony, because it's not got enough space down there. But it's all looking nice and wild, which is the whole point of this area. The cordylin has put on quite a bit of strong growth, but I just worry that there's too many little pups on that little bottom bit of the plant. So I think I'm going to have to cut a few back, but I am going to try and pot them up themselves and see if I can get some free little cordylin plants. Down here we've just got the little frog pond that's hidden away. This is the third little pond. It's the original one that I built when I first got the plot. I knew I wanted something just to get me going before I built the big one. And this is just surrounded by a unkept area of wilderness really. I've let the grass go wild. There's all types of weed growing in there, which is just great for the insects. And more insects mean more food for the birdies. Now we're going to brave it in the polytunnel. I don't know how long we're going to last in here because it's going to be quite warm, but the tomatoes really have taken off. I do need to come in and remove the side shoots. You want to be doing that every 3-4 days really, to try and keep on top of them rather than weekly, because they do grow pretty quick this time of the year. All down the sides, the French marigolds are doing really well, he says, spotting one that isn't doing great. And then at the back, I do need to give it a good water in here. We have got the cucumbers. So these are your standard sort of telegraph type cucumbers, which are nice and long. And then over in the corner, I think only one of the lemon apple ones survived. So I'm quite excited to see how they turn out. Then we've got 2 chilies, and the aubergines, they're now starting to produce flowers. So I think I might just cut them down to 2 or 1 bud, just so I get at least 1 or 2 aubergines off those plants. And all the tomatoes, they're all coming out, so don't forget to give them all a tap. That will help pollinate your flowers. I know it might sound a little bit silly, but just go around and tap your flowers when you see them. But we've already got quite a few tomatoes already forming, so it won't be long before they start to ripen off. Down this side of the polytunnel, we've got the potted plants. So we've got some geraniums or pelargoniums, some French marigolds, and also some herbs, so thyme, rosemary, oregano. It just adds that nice bit of colour down here and a little bit of character. And I have chosen plants that I know are quite drought tolerant. As we just pan round to this bed down here, we've got a sad looking tomato plant here, so I might give that a feed and a good water. We've got a cucumber. I wanted to see how they'd do outside. That might actually be one of the apple lemons, so we'll see how that fares outside. Another tomato plant down in that corner, and then we've got volunteer potatoes down here, along with the pretty little bindweed that we get. So we'll give this bed a really good clear out today and take these potatoes home. And whilst I'm here, I think I might try and dig out that planter as well and see what potatoes we can get out of there. Down here we've got little tomato plants. Now I haven't cordoned these, which I probably should have, so we will give them a stake. And then we've got a squash in the middle. Don't ask me which one. If you go back a few videos, you will be able to see the types of squash that I planted this year. And then that is the dahlia. I was really worried I was going to lose this one this year. It comes out in a sort of a yellow and a pink and a peach. It's beautiful, really spiky. And then in the back we have got some tomatoes and another couple of squash. I did worry that it might get a little bit overcrowded, which might be the case, but we'll see how we get on. And then we've got a couple of little potato pots there. And behind there, that's the pond underneath the pear tree. Behind the polytunnel we have got the 2 squash plants down here. Again, not too sure which is which. Cheeky curry, butternut, and there's a couple of others that were quite new this year. And then we've also got the climbing beans. So they are French beans and runner beans. And at the back, standing bright in purple, are the leeks, which I let go over this year because the bees absolutely love those allium plants. And then just down here we've got the other squash, which are now starting to trail out, and we've even got a couple of little fruit now starting to form. But these 2 down here don't seem to be trailing, and I'm starting to think, are they courgette plants rather than squash plants? I've never known a squash variety to bush, but we'll find out. And then down there we've got 2 of the sunflowers, which are yet to burst out. We have had one which has started to lean over, but it seems to be picking itself back up, so we're going to leave that. And then we've also got the French beans climbing up these bean poles here. So it shouldn't be too long before this bed is covered in all sorts of squash. We have got a little squash just over there as well, which I'm hoping will spread into that bed once the leeks have finished. And then under the beans I have underplanted with nasturtiums, which brings the bees in. So the bees will start at the bottom and then work their way up to the beans when they start to flower. But we are a little bit behind because these were quite lately sown, because the first lot didn't germinate. Mustn't forget the little cucumber down here. I think this is one of the apple lemons, which I'm quite excited for. Plenty of flowers on there, and it is spreading quite nicely. I'm trying to get it to go up the sunflower and see how that goes. I really need to think about some summer planting in these beds. I've got the crocosmia, which is now starting to come out and bloom, and we have got 2 smaller plants which are yet to bloom out. The parsnip is also going over, and we've got some dahlias. The Michaelmas daisies that I planted out down here, they've taken really quite well. And then at the back we've got an absolute jungle of all sorts. Over in the sage corner we've got a little bit of a marigold forest going on. I do like these marigolds, even when they start to go over. Look at those spiky little petals. We've got all sorts of little colours going on in here. They seem to hybrid over the years, but I'm hoping that all the bare patches should soon be full of these little pot marigolds. And then back here it's a mixture of things going over, like the foxglove here, that's now starting to seed up, and also the nigella. But we've still got the lavender to come out, so this is a white lavender. We've got some purple munstead going along down the side of the path, the catmint, the poppies, pot marigolds, and then all the different types of weeds that we've got in there. I think I've got a couple of roses too, but that pear tree is just overwhelmed by the amount of flowers that are in this bed. Finally, we're just in the fruit cage. We've got the blueberries in there, so there's a few that are ready, but most of them still got a couple of more weeks to go, and there's more than just a handful this year. And then along here we've got the red currants. They're starting to go over a little bit, so I really need to go in there and pick those out, get them in the freezer. And then just down here, these are the gooseberries. Now they are just a year or 2 old, so we haven't had much off these, only a couple of berries actually. Whereas these guys down here are a lot older, and these are full of berries. So I need to pick all of these today because they're definitely ripe enough, and we'll get them home and in the freezer for some gooseberry fall or some gooseberry jam. I'll bring you along when I do some. And then along here we've got the raspberries. So most of them are autumn fruiting, so we wouldn't expect them just yet, but I did leave some of them to grow quite tall over the year, and I didn't cut them right back, so we've got some early raspberries on some of them, which is quite a useful little tip if you want some early raspberries. That whole corner is full of canes, and then we've got a pink currant bush down there, which also is covered in currants that are ready to be picked. We've even got some raspberries on the runners that were from a couple of years ago. I thought I'd got them all out of the ground, but they're actually growing outside of the fruit cage, but they seem to be growing inwards, so that's handy. And then if we just pan round over here, This is the grapevine, and like I say, we've got quite a few little baby grapes on there this year. It's the first time. I need to prune it. I'm not going to this year because it's doing absolutely fantastically. It's definitely something to think about in the future. And these are today's goodies. So we have got the gooseberries, we've got quite a few raspberries as well, handful of blueberries and red currants. We've got some carrots, beetroot. These are the pods of the radishes. We've got some Charlotte potatoes in here, quite a few, CS3 for the week I reckon, maybe a little bit longer. And then I have pulled a couple of the onions up and a few of the garlic. Now I have noticed that the garlic has started to get white rot, so I'm going to pull them all up tomorrow and get that job done, and then we can start drying some of these out, and hopefully some of them will be usable. But you can really start to see that rust which develops all over the leaves of the garlic, so it's definitely time for them to come up. But quite a nice little harvest for the beginning of July, plenty more to come. So that was the July 2023 plot tour. I am conscious that these are quite long videos, so I'm trying to condense them now. I think the last one was nearly an hour long, so we'll try condensing, and if that doesn't work we will start doing a part 1 and part 2 video on a Saturday and Sunday. But it's starting to sort of cloud over now, so I think I'm going to head home, and then tomorrow we can come down and start on some of the jobs that I've taken note of whilst doing the plot. I hope you're all having a lovely weekend wherever you are in the world, and you've got a good week ahead of you. I'm lucky in that I've got next week off, so I am going to be down the plot a little bit more, so I'll bring you guys along with me, and I might head out on a couple of adventures too. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and all of that good stuff, and I'll see you down here again for another adventure down on the plot. So take care guys, see you soon, bye bye.